Hi, this is Mike Ellick, and welcome to my somewhat cramped and crowded garage. There's quite a few people out here doing some work, but that's not why I brought you out here. This video is a little bit different from what I usually do. I've been working on this new kitchen island, and I found myself in need of having to attach some trim pieces. And so one of the ways you can do it is you just get a hammer and nail and just tap it in, and you should be good. But in this case, I thought, you know what, it's probably time to invest in a brad nailer. I looked at some of the cordless units, but the cordless units were quite expensive. And so what I did was I ended up buying an air compressor. An air compressor kit that came with a brad nailer, the hose, and the brad nailer for 18 gauge brad nails. From what I can tell, this is very similar to the Porter and Cable unit that had been sold. I don't know if it's still on the market, but it's very similar to it. There are a couple differences. One is there are two outlets for connecting two hoses, and I believe with Porter and Cable, with one you get full output, and with this one it's really adjustable according to the air pressure that you dial in. It has a has its usual electric cable. This regulates the air pressure in the hose, and this monitors the tank pressure. This is a release pin. This is when you want to release all the air that's in the tank after you've used it, on-off switch. All right, so what the drain plug is for is after you finish your job, you should drain the tank of air, and instead of letting it just sit in there. And so you lower the pressure by using this release pin. You lower the pressure. The release pin lowers the pressure. You're supposed to drop it to 20 psi, and then you're supposed to loosen this little relief valve. And what will happen is as the air comes shooting out of here, so will some water that was condensation inside the tank, as well as possibly a bit of oil. Once you're finished, you tighten it up, and that really helps any moisture or humidity that's in the air from re-entering the tank. Now, in addition to the tank, you also get two instruction manuals, and I really highly recommend reading both of the instruction manuals. It's only going to take you half an hour or so, but there's a lot of information in here, a lot of useful information. The other two items, as I mentioned, are you get this hose item. I'm not sure of the length, I didn't measure it. What it is, whatever it says on the tank. It looks to be about, I guess that would probably be about 12 to 15 feet. Maybe it's 20 feet actually. And you get the brad nailer. As I mentioned, this is sort of a lighter duty unit. Maximum nail size is 18 gauge. And it'll take pretty much any strip of brad nails that are sold on the market today, and they run anywhere, I believe, from 5/8 of an inch up to 2 inches. Now you can see right here the recommended PSI for this particular unit. And of course, the more PSI you have, the deeper it will shoot that brad into the wood. The one thing that I realized when I was doing this video is you need some air tool oil. So back to the hardware store for me, and I just bought this small container of this is the Lowe's brand, Cobalt. Every time you use an air tool, you just put in a couple of drops right into the inlet hose before you attach the hose. So it's literally just drop, and then you're good to go. And this helps lubricate obviously it helps lubricate all the parts. And it's supposed to ensure smooth, clean airflow throughout the tool. I think, like all tools, heed the manufacturer's advice, and also just, be safe with your tools. Be safe with your tools. Now, loading the brad nailer is pretty straightforward. You press down on this tab, and it slides out. You take your strip of nails, just drop them in, and then you just close it till it locks. That's it. This has a two-stage safety to it, and so it won't release. It's not plugged in, so I'm safe, but it won't release unless you pull the trigger, and if you pull the trigger, it won't release unless the nose is depressed, and you'll see how that's sprung. But even if you were to pull the trigger and push down on the nose, it shouldn't release that that nail. It only releases if you first push this against the surface and then pull the trigger. There's a small adjustment here, small little wheel, and that will adjust the depth of the firing depth for the nail into the wood. Let's go ahead and get things started. So the first thing we need to do is we need to connect this hose. And so you just pull back on the collar. So this is fairly simple. You just pull back on the collar, push this in, and release it. Give it a little tug on it. It is correctly attached. You can unwind your hose bit, make sure you don't have any kinks in it. As I mentioned, we're going to oil this, so this is fairly simple. 1, 2. That's it. You can close that up. Now we'll attach the hose to the tool. Same thing. You pull back on that collar, push it in, give it a little tug, make sure it's nice and tight. It is. You're good. Now these of course don't have like some tools, they don't have that manual, that double safety. And of course the reason is because you have to, as I mentioned, depress the nose and then pull the trigger. So the next thing that we have to do is we have to plug this in and bring this up to operating pressure. So I just plug it into a standard 3-prong outlet. They don't suggest using any type of adapters, not the 3 to 2. And that's pretty much it. I believe it only takes a few minutes for this to come up to operating pressure. Now, before you turn this on, you're supposed to turn this all counterclockwise. Turn it all the way to the left, which I've done. Make sure your relief valve is tightly closed. Done. And you can pull on this. You should always test this. This is spring loaded. So when you pull it out, it shouldn't stay out. It should just go right back in when you release, when you let it go. All right. So we're going to see how long this takes. Here we are at 0. All right. Now it's at about 130. So that's good enough. And that was roughly a little bit more than 2 minutes. Now you turn this till you get your desired pressure. Now this, I believe, has an operating range of between, if we were to look at that again, it was 80 to 100 psi. Oh, between 70 and 100. So let's go ahead and dial in 80. Now the question is, how long of a brad nail should you use? And the answer is, the recommended is that you use double the thickness of your material. So this is 3/4 inch, so that means my brad nail should be 1.5 inches. However, I really don't want the nail sticking out from the other side, so I picked up brad nails that are 1 1/4 inch. And you'll be able to hear that it's really not that loud at all. Now we're just going to do a couple test pieces of wood. And we always have test pieces around here. Obviously you should always be safe with your tools, as I mentioned. You always want to end the day with all your fingers and toes intact and nothing embedded into your hand or arm or leg or whatever. As I mentioned, you have to push down and then pull the trigger. It's really quite simple. And you can hear it cycle. But really not loud at all. However, if you want, you can always use ear protectors. And you can see how it's shot into it, hasn't come out the other side, which I didn't want. Now, if I wanted to drive the nail just slightly deeper, I would dial in a bit more depth. So let's go ahead and try that. So let's do it 1, 2 turns. And you can see just by turning that twice, now you can see how much deeper it is. Once again, hasn't come through the other side. I sort of like this depth because then I can just fill this hole, give it a light sand, and then I'll be finished. So that's my very quick review of the Craftsman. I think you would call this a pancake air compressor and kit. Pancake air compressor kit that came with the hose and the brad nailer. Of course, I had to go out and buy the nails and buy the tool oil as well. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next time, probably with something about a camera.